I interviewed Mrs. Moore, who is a 4th and 5th grade ESL at Forest Home Avenue on the south side of Milwaukee. And I started off the interview by asking her these questions. What does she do as a teacher, like any other role other than teaching? And then what is she mostly focused on in the school? And how is working with another teacher? And now this was just to start the interview. And then I dive into classroom logistics, classroom management, and finally her positives and negatives of co-teaching. So Mrs. Moore, she works with 3 different teachers, 2 4th grade teachers and 1 5th grade teacher. The classes are all in the same room. One half of the room is 4th grade and the other is 5th grade, which shocked me because I'm used to one class being in one room, not 2 different classes, especially that they are consisting of different grades, both 4th and 5th. In most cases, she takes the students she is working with, as an ESL, to a separate part of the classroom. And she is proud to announce that some of her ESL students have graduated from ESL. Now they are in, generic education. For the most part, she helps teach the general curriculum because, they need the extra help. Mrs. Moore is mostly focused on creating relationships and having a good rapport with the students. She is still working on the teaching part, meaning that she feels like she could meet the students' needs a little more. She tries to relate with the students to help form a bond between them. I can relate to this because I have noticed that Mrs. Moore cares about all of the students. No matter what that bond may be, she'll find a way to connect with each and every student. Now, another surprising fact to me is that Mrs. Moore started teaching at a charter school when I always thought she taught in public schools. Like now, she enjoys teaching at Forest Home Avenue. According to Mrs. Moore, depending on the teacher, it can be relatively uncomfortable contacting them because they might not be feeling good or are trying to reach them at the wrong time. She's trying to reach them at the wrong time. They might be busy, they might not want to spend any more time on work than they have to. So the other teacher also might have a different thing in mind. So the teacher might be thinking of showing a subject a certain way, but then Mrs. Moore, she shows the subject a certain way and the teacher doesn't really understand that. So some advice taken from Mrs. Moore, is that it is extremely valuable to keep in touch with that teacher. Once you are in contact with the teacher, things go much smoother. Now, time for classroom logistics, classroom management, and then lastly, I'll get into favorite positives, of hers, and then some negatives. So, starting with classroom logistics, I asked her, how the room is laid out. And she said the desks in class are in groups to make the classroom feel more like a community, kind of like, our classrooms on the university. According to her, although, each group is colored according to skill level. And there is no way I agreed with this one bit, because teachers should pay attention to all students and keep those students who are struggling in their mind, not in a separate physical group. I remember talking about this in class with you, Mr. Johnson, and you said that, like, some students with a modified test, like, the teacher would keep those at a certain spot in the pile and then just pass out the test to students without making it obvious that, those students who have modified tests are, like, any different than anyone else in the classroom. So then I asked for the model of co-teaching, like how she co-teaches with the 3 different teachers she does. 2 4th, 1 5th grade teacher. Now, in the morning, the class reads books. And during this, Mrs. Moore checks on and works with those who struggle, who are obviously struggling. Like, she even mentioned that books could be, like, upside down. Kids could just be pretending to read because they don't want to read. And then she works with them. She can read a page, they will read a page, and different options like that. So she really works with the students. The 4th grade teachers could also swap positions with the 5th grade teachers. So Mrs. Moore has to stay prepared to switch topics, like, on the spot. Now, some routines and rules. Although class should consist of a whole group plus small group lesson, a teacher sees, like, one teacher, either the 2 4th grade or 1 5th grade, Mrs. Moore even, they see one group every day depending on the student's group skill level, So, which I do not agree with, because teachers should be working with groups of no matter what level every day. That's what being a teacher, consists of. In her school and through all of MPS, the rules are to be safe, be responsible, and be respectful. That is what MPS is known for. That's how they run. And the rules for her school are to incorporate students' decision. So let them make their decisions. Students at the beginning of the year have a choice of jobs that they are going to keep for the rest of the year. Like, their jobs don't rotate as seen in many other schools. They choose a job and they stick to that job for the rest of the year. Okay, now we are getting into classroom management. So, consequences for bad behavior are pretty lenient. I mean, I'd say that these consequences are seen in the average school because teachers give verbal warning, like all teachers do, all teachers should. But for when it gets, like, more intense, like fighting and walking out of class, plus refusing to come back, then the assistant principal will come into play and deal with more of that. And culturally, students in South Milwaukee don't respect the teacher. So she creates a rapport with the students, like call and response. So she calls out the directions and then the students will respond. And she also stands in front of the room leading the class in instruction, showing the class that she is the leader. She is taking control. There are some communication questions. So in classroom discussion, there is a hard time with 4th grade, and they are doing the HMH curriculum. So she gives an anchor chart for how to have a discussion because the students do not know how to have discussions. They talk out of turn and don't pay attention to the speaker. After she taught how classroom conversations should go, students now raise their hand most of the time before being able to speak. But students being students, of course, they'll talk out of turn once in a while. But it is way better than it was before. Having a good relationship with parents, as you know, is recommended by most teachers. She said she doesn't have the best relationship with most parents because they are learning English as well, or they completely don't speak English. Okay, finally, we are getting to our positives and negatives. Okay, she said her number one positive is that it is the best practice to co-teach. It is nice being in sync with your fellow teacher. Then it is easy to go back and forward with them, like build off of them as we discussed in class. Students also benefit from two teachers because each teacher brings their own flavor, their own style of teaching, as we also discussed in the beginning of this semester. Students like different teaching because it can help students engage more. Like, for example, okay, Mrs. So-and-so is teaching this way, and then they're kind of fading out, like, oh, okay. But then Mrs. Moore comes and they're like, oh, whoa, okay, a different way of teaching. I like this. So that's great. That's a great positive. Now, students like different teaching because it can help students engage more, as we discussed at the beginning of the semester. And it's also enjoyable lesson planning with your co-teacher, when she can find a time where they are free and also want to co-teach. So that really depends. But when they find that time to actually make a lesson plan together, she says it's awesome. You can find any time of the day to work with the other teacher. So if you just see them walking in the hall, then you pull them aside and be like, hey, you want to work on this? You want to work on that? Instead of actually formally like calling them or emailing them, because she said in many cases, they don't always get back to her right away, even before the lesson comes up that she wants to plan with them. So, and that is getting into negatives. So now continuing with the negatives, the most challenging thing is collaboration. So communicate with the other person. If there is no set time to plan, it makes collaboration even more difficult. And as I am doing right now, I'm collaborating with Olivia. She's my co-teacher. That should be fun. We really click. And now it is hard to go over what they are anticipating, what the other teacher is anticipating, which results in taking class time to find out what they will do next. And communication can be hard, which I didn't really get because I really never experienced a hard time communicating with a co-teacher. All in all, this interview was a great experience, and it was great talking to Mrs. Moore and having just having an actual teacher tell me how it is before, jumping into the profession. Thank you.